Wonder does it back record all this stuff since I technically started streaming on OBS earlier? Seems like it might. I might have to remember that for the future. Hello, if anybody's here. A little late on these. I'm trying to get better. I just wanted to eat before I got into this, and it took me longer than I thought. As you can tell, I can be finicky with my timing. But I got here. I did it. I did something, right? Where did we leave off? Left off here. That was what she thought. Oh, let's get right into it. ReZero, Bonds of Ice, Chapter 2, I Am Here. Northeast in the Dragon Kingdom of Lagunica, the Ilior Forest was known as the Frozen Forest. Within Lagunica, it was considered to be an extremely unusual environment. These peculiarities had been recorded for around a century. Lagunica was typically temperate, warm in the fire season and cold in the ice season. It was only in a certain area far north that one could see snowfall year-round. If one were to then compare Ilior Forest to other areas, it would be clear that its weather patterns were completely abnormal. The source of this abnormality was commonly considered to be a spirit. To give an example, take the Holy Kingdom of Gusteco, a land covered in permafrost, where spirits were seen on a regular basis. There even existed a nationwide religion worshipping spirits. The Holy Church of Gusteco. Extreme regions were considered to be trials put forth by spirits, and the majority of the population believed in these teachings. Even beyond Gusteco's scriptures, it was common knowledge that these spirits' powers had repercussions on the entire world. It was also very common to respect spirits, the only exception being the Wallachian Empire. But even so, it was a fact that spirits were beings of incredible power, and it was well known that to provoke one was to invite disaster. This has gotten a bit long, so let's conclude with this. The source of the extreme weather in Lagunica's Ilior Forest was a spirit who lived there, and angering such a powerful spirit would bring catastrophe. That was Lagunican Kingdom's viewpoint, due to which the forest continued to rest undisturbed to this day. Of course, the girl who lived there had no way of knowing this. Wait, what? Oh, okay. Puck, look! There's so many of those shiny stones! We did it! Amelia proclaimed joyously as she lay on the ground, waving to Puck. Deep in the forest, there was a place she called the Doddering Thicket, a place that only had very old trees, all frozen. Their dense foliage blocked out the sun, leaving the area dark at all times. It was so dark that even one's footing was uncertain, and Amelia laid there with her eyes sparkling. "That's really great, but be sure not to take too many. They'll lose value." Puck lay down next to her, waving his tail as he warned her. Her grand discovery was reflected in his eyes, too. Before them were old roots protruding out of the ground, meandering and coiling around each other. Within a gap in the roots was a well-hidden opening in the ground. Even in darkness, that frozen opening had a glow to it. It was the vein of shiny stones, as Amelia called them. "What do you mean, lose value? They're all pretty, aren't they?" "It'd be great if everyone thought that way, but if there's a lot of a certain item, people tend to think of it as less special." Amelia cocked her head in confusion as she crawled to the opening. She then used a knife to carefully cut the stones out of the ground. Ah, wait. Ah, this feels really good. Wait, what? No. Ah, that feels really good. Like cleaning someone's ears. That sort of reaction to stones this pretty. I can't say I dislike it. Is that a compliment? Of course, you're quite good at expressing your joy. It's splendid. Amelia continued to scrape the wall with a rusted and chipped knife as Puck silently applauded and encouraged her. Honestly, it was distracting. Anyway, Puck's advice was given in good faith. It was easy for her to lose herself as she did thus, but it would be troublesome if she took too many, because this was the only source of income she had. Besides, they won't form new ones if we take them all, right? That's right. They're basically mana in crystallized form. If they accumulate particularly if they accumulate particularly large amounts of mana, become magic stones, and other such stones start forming around them. This place is very conducive to their formation, so the trick is to leave a few behind. Hmm, you really are smart. You could even call me a mana expert. In fact, you could even call me an Amelia expert. Puck stroked his whiskers as he smiled at a wide-eyed Amelia. It's true, you know. If you collect too many of these, you'll want to keep them and then use them to decorate your room. Yes, I can see the future clearly. You're not seeing the future. That's something I did a long time ago. History is a circle. People repeat their mistakes. Ah, that was pretty deep, huh? If he was seeking agreement, he would find none from Amelia. However, there was some truth to his words. She had once tried to hoard the stones in secret, not wanting to give them away. I'd gathered so many, but then suddenly they lost their luster and became ordinary rocks. Because they're piles of mana. If there were an even larger source of mana nearby, they would steadily be absorbed by it and become empty. An even bigger source? Ah, that's me. Amelia was left Amelia was left dumbfounded by this nonchalant declaration. She remained silent as Puck nodded at her without a hint of guilt. Basically, as long as I'm with you, they'll be no different from ordinary rocks. I guess you could say it's a real waste. Now hurry up and trade them for dinner before you get attacked. Wait, is a pun a saying used for waste here is something like the king jewels if interpreted literally? Ah. Understood. Understood completely. Turning on me like that, you're horrible. Amelia obeyed his instructions, clearly displeased. She put the stones in her pouch and confirmed their weight before leaving. She tidied her snow-stained robe and she carved a sign into a nearby tree to mark the location. A portrait of Puck. Quite a good one, if she said so herself. A crushed witch beast? Amelia ignored Puck's teasing and returned to the garden. She soon reached familiar territory and sighed in relief as the tension left her face. Looks like the forest still has a lot of places we don't know about. The forest reconnaissance team has a grand total of 2 members, after all, and I don't really cooperate, so in truth, you're doing it alone. Even so, you're steadily completing that rather avant-garde map. Avant-garde? You're trying to trick me with tough words. That wasn't trickery, merely an honest impression. Contrary to his cat-like appearance, it wasn't uncommon for Puck to use words she didn't understand. This was usually when he wanted to hide his true feelings from her. It made her feel a little lonely, but she also thought herself selfish for feeling that way. It feels like you're being all haboncho again, though. Regional slang for ostracizing somebody. I don't really understand what you're saying either. I guess the feeling is mutual. Having heard her mutter, Puck shrugged his shoulders in a human-like manner. They arrived at her home as they continued their conversation. They left the sled at the roots of the tree she'd remodeled into her home. She intended to sell its contents along with the stones she'd collected. By the way, it's really convenient how this sled doesn't melt away. It's because I made it, you know? Want to ride down some slopes later? That sounds really fun, but I don't have time for that. Maybe some other time. Having rejected his invitation, Amelia smiled bitterly as she pulled the sled. The boxes were quite heavy, but thanks to Puck's sled, she could move them fairly easily. However, it was lacking in that it couldn't cross uneven terrain. Though Amelia would normally bound through rough terrain, she currently had to use gentler paths. Looks like there's more snow falling around these zigzagging woods than before. It's getting harder to walk. Straight to the point, huh? Zigzagging. No complaining. It's my map, so I'll name them as I please. Amelia pouted at Puck, who was complaining from the sled. He had a habit of criticizing her naming scheme. It was scheme. It was at the point where Amelia, being stubborn herself, would no longer even consider his suggestions. Easy to understand names that you wouldn't forget. Really good names, she thought. Zigzagging. Ah, we're reaching the exit. It's about time I left. You'd better put on your hood, too. Don't forget. That's hard to swallow. But fine, I get it. Amelia reluctantly nodded to Puck's advice as he took his leave when they reached the end of the zigzagging woods. Donning her hood, she hid her silver hair. Puck seemed satisfied by this and smiled. He then started disappearing with no warning. Suddenly disappearing like that is a real bad habit of his. It was quite the shock back then. She was used to the sight now, but it was terribly surprising when she first saw it. Spirits could freely control the formation and disintegration of their bodies from atmospheric mana. Not knowing this, Amelia was driven to tears when Puck suddenly disappeared with no explanation. She still remembered how angry she was when Puck just showed up like nothing happened the very next day. Whoops, can't get distracted now. Realizing she was getting caught up reminiscing, Amelia consciously put a stop to it and braced herself. She had almost reached her destination. It wasn't the time to fool around. The closer she got, the more her face stiffened. Even as her heart raced, she knew things were going quiet. What awaited her demanded that sort of resolution. She was now alone, having separated from Puck. Her surroundings steadily changed. The difference in atmosphere was strikingly clear. The drumming in her chest grew ever more violent. The snow-covered landscape around her changed into brilliant greenery as she proceeded. The deeper one went into Ilier Forest, the more extreme the cold became. However, the opposite was also true. The effect weakened as one left the forest, and the outskirts were no different from any ordinary forest. Of course, that did not mean that cold disappeared entirely, but it was no longer lethal to humans. At the chilly outskirts of the forest, there existed a human settlement. I'm here. Amelia stopped and narrowed her eyes at the scene before her. Through the gaps in the trees, she could make out some small houses. Houses made of brick, villagers wearing faded clothes. There were perhaps 40 or 50 people here, and they weren't particularly well off, according to Puck. That was second-hand information, but Amelia did know how lonely the place felt. Even they wanted nothing to do with Amelia, who only had Puck and her sculptures for companions. Discarding her hesitation, Amelia walked toward the village. Pulling her sled through a gap in the fence, she entered the place, feeling the ground through the soles of her shoes. It was well past noon, approaching evening. It was a season with long days. The sun still shone brightly in the sky. There was still some time before sundown. The sun still shone brightly in the sky. There was still some time before sundown. For that reason, there were still small children playing in a clearing in the middle of the village. Their joyous voices were somewhat comforting to Amelia. It was a poor village with few inhabitants, but the children's joy was priceless. She felt that the sight of those happy children could make anyone smile. At the very least, Amelia felt that way. However, she herself was the reason this couldn't continue. Ah. A feeble voice from one of the children. The child had spotted her when he turned around. His smile immediately disappeared, tension evident on his face. That striking response spread like a chain reaction. He looked at Amelia as they quietly whispered to each other and then left the area. The rapid evacuation didn't even leave Amelia the chance to say anything. Amelia wanted to sigh, even though she knew all along she would be rejected completely, with no opportunity to explain herself. I didn't even do anything. Amelia grumbled as she felt an air of fear spread through the village. Children to adults, adults to neighbors, news of the forest person's arrival spread. The village was on high alert, and the so-called forest person, Amelia, picked up her pace as she continued pulling her sled towards destination. Within clearing lay the village's only marketplace, one in name only. It was essentially a place to exchange goods. The villagers could bring their plants or animal products and quickly trade them. However, its meager lineup was more than enough for Amelia. Leaving her sled at the entrance, Amelia took a deep breath and entered. You, huh? A room that had only a roof. A room that only had a roof, with an aging man sitting before some goods lined up on a long table. The man wore a headband, and his forehead was deeply wrinkled. He scowled at Amelia as he spoke to her in a low voice. His tone and eyes made it clear he wasn't welcoming her. However, he wasn't ignoring or distracting her, which was a relief. The usual, please. All right. They exchanged a few words. The man then stood up in response to her laconic request. He pitched up a nearby box and haphazardly tossed some crops and spices in. Meanwhile, Amelia took her pouch out as she prepared to pay with the stones she'd collected. Your shoes? Your shoes. How about them? Amelia was momentarily dumbfounded by his hoarse whisper, but she immediately looked down and noticed the condition of her shoes, so ragged she was practically barefoot. Ah, please do as you see. They've gotten all holy as of late. And, giving no response, the man slinked into the back of the building. Amelia simply smiled bitterly at her situation. However, she was really happy he noticed her shoes before she said anything. Here. Thank you so much. They fit just right. He held out some crude shoes, cobbled together from cloth and hide. Amelia would normally very quickly ruin her shoes running around in the forest, so she figured she was better off barefoot, but that wouldn't do in front of others. This was also something she learned from experience. Having confirmed the shoe's size and feel, she paid him with their stones, but he then passed her the box he'd filled. Having obtained these, wait, what? Did I? Okay, no, that is. What on earth? Is it just... past the box he'd filled. Having obtained these, her shopping trip was complete. Perhaps she could segue into a small talk if they were closer, but unfortunately, his gaze didn't allow it. As usual, she had to leave okay. As usual, she'd have to leave things at that and head back to the garden. However, her chores that day didn't end at shopping. Actually, I brought some stuff that was left behind in the forest. Her proposal caused the man, who thought they were done, to raise his brow. Amelia went outside and pointed to the sled and the boxes she'd left there. This was how she intended to dispose of the intruder's cargo. This was what she always did, taking the items left behind to the village. Since she couldn't return them to the original owners, she at least wanted someone to make use of them. Understood. I'll take them. Please do. The man examined the contents of the boxes, drawing in his chin as he looked at the bottled substance. Leaving their handling to the village, Amelia bowed and left for real this time. She didn't pass a single villager on her way back. She wondered if there was a rule dictating no one go outside until she left, but if they were openly rejecting her to this extent, the shopkeeper's blunt attitude was wonderful by comparison. She had once gone to the shop while a woman was watching over it, sending her into a convulsing fit. Shopping aside, Amelia couldn't even explain herself before she left. It seemed they had a man in charge ever since, which she felt apologetic for. Am I really so scary, I wonder? Amelia touched her face all over, confirming what it felt like. However, she couldn't really grasp what she looked like from feel alone. Amelia was deathly afraid to know exactly what she looked like. Once she was done, she suppressed a sigh as she returned to the path into the forest. As she was about to enter, she suddenly turned around. She felt a presence watching her. How strange. It was different from the gazes of the villagers. They tried to avoid her as much as possible, and that included even looking at her. As long as she wasn't there, she basically didn't exist as far as they were concerned. That was precisely why the presence staring at her made her so uncomfortable. Even so, she didn't wish to confirm who exactly it was. Staying in the village much longer would be unpleasant, both for her and for the villagers. If it was something she could endure herself, she'd do it to keep the peace. Time to go, she said to herself as she ignored the persistent gaze. Amelia dashed into the green forest, her new shoes impacting the soft ground. As she ran, her breast gradually turned white, and the color left her surroundings, giving way to a snowscape. Finally, the sensation under her shoes changed to the familiar feeling of cracking ice. Oh, you're back. Welcome home. Amelia came to a sudden stop when she heard those words. Her shoes scraping the ground, catching her breath, she looked up to find Puck, who narrowed his eyes at her condition. Seems like you've had another unpleasant experience. No way. That's not the case. I got to talk a lot more than usual today. Yeah? Then hiding your face like that is a bit rude, isn't it? Puck chuckled to himself. Puck chuckled as he pointed this out, causing Amelia to realize she still had her hood on. She hastily took it off, her cheeks a bit red. How cute, like an apple. You're so nasty, Puck. I just called you cute, though. Anyway, setting aside your shopping, how about those boxes? Dissatisfied at this change in topic, Amelia shook her head. I don't know. I couldn't read the shopkeeper's expression, and later in the village... In the village? The conversation naturally led to the gaze following her, but Amelia seemed hesitant to talk about it. The reasons being rebelliousness, and that she didn't want Puck to worry. Rebelliousness, as in she didn't want to tell Puck and then get treated like a kid like usual. These factors sealed her lips. You see, the shoes. The truth is, he pointed them out before I even said anything. You know how the old ones were all holy? That's because you always wear them down right away, isn't it? I think he was definitely shocked. Even if that were the reason, it's a really big deal for him to remember a detail like that. At this rate, we might even be able to talk about the weather. The fact that he looked at her with such pity, even though she tried so hard to avoid that, really annoyed her. To Amelia, being able to talk about the weather would be a sign of greatly improved relations. The weather was a great topic, since it was always changing. She was having a hard time thinking of any other topics, though. To begin with, what weather are you planning to talk about? It's always cloudy or snowy around here. That's fine. What's important is being able to do it. Really? Why would I lie about something like this? Really, it's the truth. Amelia didn't feel particularly bad as she responded to Puck's doubting gaze. At the very least, she had someone actually talking to her. It was quite the luxury to her, since she'd normally talk to those mute sculptures. I didn't record it. Whatever. Oops. Whatever. I'll steal the recording from the live stream if I have to. That's annoying. Of course. I managed to check, and then I managed to completely forget to record it. Oh, at least it shouldn't be too bad. I can just use the audio. Have I really been going for... No, I haven't been going for an hour. Why does it show an hour on here? That's weird. I wondered about that. I think I'll read one more. How long is this next part? Oh, never mind. That's really short. I'll read two more. I'll just get through 5, because 5... Yeah, I'll get through 5. That sounds good. Yeah, that's why you always check your recording. At least I have the mic plugged in, unlike that one other time. That was really annoying. That one legitimately made me kind of mad. At myself, but still mad. Part 3. The room was dim and gloomy. The windows and curtains were shut, blocking out any light from entering. A sinister atmosphere permeated the dark and still room. The room was not silent. It was a very slight sound, which continued incessantly. Hoarse brass, and the distorted sound of nails scratching at something wet. The room had a wooden floor, a simple bed, and a crystal light that had gone out. Sitting on the bed was a silent man, picking at the bandaged wound on his face. The wound covered most of the right side of his face. Even his ear, which was now gone. It was painful just to look at, but the man's expression wasn't one of pain. His bloodshot eyes were filled with hatred. The reason was a small gap in the curtains through which he could see the outside world. 4 hours ago, he'd seen a girl in a white robe through that gap. Not only had she ruined their transaction, she even insulted their way of life. Furthermore, considering her words and her movement in the village. "Excuse me, boss. A young man with a deep voice knocked on the door, then entered without waiting for a response. The darkness caused him to flinch, but he fixed his posture when he spotted the man on the bed. The man wordlessly urged his visitor to speak, having deduced that from from his silence, the young man started speaking to the bandaged man, their bearded leader. "Looks like you guessed right, boss." "You sure?" They didn't want to talk, but we squeezed it out of them. What now? Having received this report, the bearded man stopped his scratching. He sniffed his finger, which was covered in blood and pus, the foul smell warping his face into an evil smile. "Bring me the cage." "The cage, sir?" "They'll know what you're talking about. And then the troops. We'll set out when they're assembled. Get them ready." The subordinate nodded as he gulped at the insane look in the bearded man's eyes. Having made sure of that, the bearded man started staring at a wall, picturing the forest beyond it. "All right, let's get you in that cage. You'll be our plaything till you die, girl." It had been several days since their trip to the village, and even more since their battle. As far as Amelia was concerned, nothing had changed in that time. She would look after the sculptures in the morning. Puck would start his meddling midway, and when she was done, she would have her breakfast, after which she would start working on her map. In the evening, Puck would show up again and hang out for a bit, accompanying her on her way home, since she would stop at her map making before sundown. She would then have her dinner and take a bath, after which she'd go to sleep and end her day. These peaceful days continued without incident. That was probably why Amelia ended up forgetting about the strange gaze she'd felt in the village. That she didn't think was a threat, it steadily left her thoughts, and today was no different. "You might get a little lonely, but I'll have to step out for a bit today." Oh wait. "You might get a little lonely, but I'll have to step out a bit for a bit today." That was the first thing Puck said to Amelia, who had just barely woken up and was washing her face in the stream. "Umir?" "Yeah, that's right. A little outing. Don't cry because I'm not around, okay?" "I won't cry or anything." Puck acted rather self-important as he passed a towel to Amelia, who was the furthest thing from a morning person. Amelia finally realized what they were talking about as she sluggishly dried her face. You're free to do whatever you want, whenever you want, though. Guess there's days like this now and then, huh? You think I'm just telling you in advance like this? I think just telling you in advance like this is already quite good for a vagabond." Yeah, that's right." Nodding at his assertion, Amelia cast her eyes downward, still holding her towel to her face. She blinked several times before she looked back up at Puck. "Then, can I ask where you're going?" "It's a secret, but it isn't anything dangerous, suspicious, or wrong." "That sounds real dodgy." "If I say I won't do something, I won't do it. That's why I never help with your map making, you know?" "That's not something to be proud of." No matter what she said, Puck could always talk his way out of it. "You really can't say?" "Yeah, sorry. But look, secrets just make a girl more desirable." "Eh? You're a girl?" "Nah, just wanted to try saying it. I really am a guy. Furthermore, it'd be real bad if I were a girl. I wouldn't be able to fulfill a really important promise, you see." Right. Puck placed his hands on his back and puffed his chest out, causing Amelia to sigh and nod. It didn't seem like he intended to respond sincerely, and she didn't really have the right to ask for more details. He didn't have to tell her any more than he had, and their relationship didn't warrant it. "Can I ask you about your plans for today?" "You already know. The same as usual." "I see. Sorry for asking." "You're such a bully. Just forget it." Puck laughed cheerfully as Amelia pouted as his teasing. Amelia then turned her back on him, intending to go clean the sculptures. However, at that moment, Amelia, I won't be with you, so don't do anything dangerous. I should be saying that to you. Don't run off with some stranger, or... Amelia turned around as she replied, but her sentence stopped midway. Puck's gaze was warm and gentle. His round black eyes seemed to contain some strong emotion. If something were to happen, your first priority should be to run away, and if it seems dangerous, run away immediately. Understood? Don't let the ice flowers bloom, even by mistake. Yeah. Amelia looked away as she nodded. Her attitude wasn't quite one of assessment. Puck seemed satisfied and started to fade away. As she watched his physical form disappear, Amelia started to pout. He really is unfair. He was always playing dumb, but he'd occasionally get so serious all of a sudden. When he spoke to her that way, she couldn't possibly brush it off. Even if she didn't like it, she had to stay aware of that which lay inside her. It wouldn't do to disobey Puck's instructions. Both Amelia and Puck knew this. Perhaps Puck even more so than her. He wouldn't speak of it in detail. Perhaps that too was part of the secret he'd mentioned. I'd better get moving. If she got wrapped up in her thoughts, there wouldn't be an end to it. Disregarding the labyrinth that was her thoughts, she got back to her work. By keeping her daily routine this way, he was also protecting her heart. Subconsciously aware of this, Amelia ran toward the garden with a towel in hand. Nice, I got a few people here. It's a shame, since I'm about to probably end this. Oof. That is probably where I'm going to end for now. How long have I been going? About 40 minutes. This next part's probably a bit longer, right? This chapter is going to be a few parts. Okay, I stopped at 5. So I better remember that. This chapter is definitely longer than the last one. Oh, sheesh. Did I go through like half of that? Maybe not. Okay, no, I guess not. It feels like I did, but I think the chapter was somewhere in the 30s, and there are 24 pages left. I'm sorry, man. I set the time. I set it for 12. I mean, I was a bit late, so I can't complain too much. I mean, I can just chill for a bit. I mean, I could partially make this an editing thing. It wouldn't hurt, right? What would it hurt? Yeah. I also need to... I need to save the first part of this video because I forgot to record it on Audacity, which is annoying. So hopefully, because I do want to hopefully edit these at some point. Actually, you know what? I might end this stream, start a new one real quick, so that this one's separate, and edit the first part of this a little. I think that would work, right? Does that sound like fair compensation? Editing? Nice, what you editing? Like a paper or something? Did I? Oh man, I didn't. Whatever. I guess I could do that later. Yeah. I think I'm going to end this one and start a new one if I can real quick. Then. Just more casual one because I want to keep this one as its own video if you want to watch through this. Oh, nice. Might check it. I know quite a few people have their own YouTubes on here. Yeah, I'm gonna end this one real quick before I keep going off on this one, and then start a new one. And we can chill. I don't care. What does it hurt, right? Well, I'm gonna do that real quick. So, well, everybody else, if they're watching, bye as well.